My name is Phillip O'Brien. I'm a research fellow in the Environmental Protection Agency, so that means I'm associated with NUI Galway, but I'm working within the Environmental Agency on climate change issues. And today I was giving a presentation as regards the impacts of climate change and the need for adaptation in a European context. There were other discussions in the Irish context, but we wanted to give a broader picture of what was happening, and particularly the information that was going to policymakers from the science. And I suppose the big issue within Europe is that the potential impact in agriculture in Europe is quite severe in the southern parts of Europe. There's a very clear north-south divide, where the southern Europe, where they already use a lot of their fresh water and so on for irrigation, up to 80%. A lot of those resources are going to be challenged even further, where there'll be increased stress in terms of hot days, hot nights and so on, which will stress the animals and also impact on the productivity and yields of crops and so on. That kind of analysis is bringing forward the reality that Southern Europe is going to be very challenged and needs quite a lot of adaptive response to cope with these situations. What's interesting is that there is much less information coming forward as regards the impact to livestock production, and that's obviously of concern to Ireland. But also actually this information is not coming forward either from the other European countries further north and Britain. And if you like, we have the same issues as Britain and Ireland because we're very closely related in terms of the projections for climate change. So I suppose that was the first message, that if you like, the European focus is on Southern Europe, but there may be a need to also consider refocusing to livestock situation and situation in the west of Europe. The second kind of point that I was trying to get across was that we need to integrate more economic thinking into not just the, if you like, the physical impacts of climate change, but also how that will impact on income and sustainability in a wider sense, economic and environmental sustainability of farming practices. There is a need for this integration of what is modelling, but it's a very familiar type of modelling. It's economic costs, benefits and so on. When it comes to actual solutions for climate change and adaptation and so on, and what we need to do, there is still quite a lot of uncertainty in this part of the world between Britain and Ireland, and that's more or less to do with our accidental, if you like, geographical location. The models are still not clear on what's going to happen here. It's much clearer for the rest of Europe. They, if you like, have very good decision-making signals, what they need to do, good incentives to change. We really haven't got a very good handle on what's going to exactly happen here, and because of that we might it's if you like, it's a call for a bit more research. We need to do deeper analysis. We need to know whether it's because the models are not quite robust enough yet, or is it because we do indeed have this we are going into a period of greater volatility in terms of weather situations, which means we have to adapt to a wider range of conditions to what we're more used to now at this stage. Well, I would say that, if you like, we do have processes of planning, and that we have our plans. We have Harvest 2020, for example. And to a certain extent, we need to consider whether we consider as you increase intensity of farming, you do push how you narrow the amount of resilience that you have. Do you have enough fodder stock? I mean, if you're on a lower intensity, you have greater resilience because you have more fodder available. But if you're pushing your stocking rates up, then you're challenging your resilience, and then you don't have the capacity to deal with an extreme year. And I suppose the issue is with climate change is that what we might call an extreme year now will not be will be more like the normal, more typical. It may be great volatility. One year is very different from the next year, but that will happen more often. Maybe you might have at the minute you might have difficulties 1 year in 10. In the future, it may be 1 year in 5, and that gives you a call to adapt to that situation, that you're not relying on others to give you helping hand. You have to build your own systems on a farm scale or a community scale, that you have the resources close at hand to deal with these kind of extremes, as we call them. So I suppose in summary then, we would say that there will be change occurring with climate change. Climate change is happening, and it'll be increasingly visible into the future. We will need to adapt our systems to this change. As yet, there is still uncertainty as to the exact nature of that change, and so that's a difficult message to get across. That, in point of fact, what we should probably be trying to do is expand our capacity to cope with different events. Rather than focusing on such things as drought or focusing in on too wet and so on. It'll actually be a range of conditions that farmers will have to cope with, and that's the adaptive capacity that we need to build.